Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is May 28th, 2024. Welcome to the program. Today I want to talk about the U.S. government policy on daycare. I want to break this up into two or three different programs that the government has to help working families with daycare. Why is this important to you? There is a segment of the population that is being left out of daycare altogether, and I'll get to that later on. So, the government recently passed the Child Care for Working Families Act, and what that did was it established building an affordable system for early education, grants for providers to increase staff wages, provide cost of living increases and graduated pay increases, and support staff's professional development. The other thing that the U.S. government did was they provide money to individual states to help offset the cost of child care, and the aid is available for families depending on what state you're in, etc. They have something called vouchers. Now, these are two important recent developments in daycare. Why is this important to you? Well, with working people who are in the middle class, and we can define that. They define that anybody making over $50,000 a year. So from year to year, it'll go up or down, family four, whatever it is. Because if it's just unwed mom and her child, that threshold is a lot lower. Generally speaking, today, daycare is important, and it's because of reasons that are not being talked about. So, the first one is, why is daycare so expensive? I remember when my kids were in daycare, we had a private person doing the daycare for us so that it wouldn't be as expensive. Now, you can go into what the daycare is providing and the education level of the people doing it. I don't want to spend time doing that because that has nothing to do with why it's so expensive now. Now, there's that Child Care for Working Families Act, which isn't really what the title is saying that it is. This one is tied to early education, which there's different funding for education for kindergarten through secondary school and then high school. That's different. So the daycare part of that is not enacted really. Daycare would be providing vouchers, since they use the word vouchers, for all Americans who are working. But I'll come back to that a little later on. So the expensive part is childcare is so expensive that babies and toddlers need the attention of focused and nurturing staff who have adequate time to develop true familiarity with children. This requires low staff child ratios ideally. So what this is saying is that there is a magic number of people to children, and that's one of the criteria of this Working Families Act. But again, it doesn't focus on all Americans who are working hard in the country, giving them some type of relief from high daycare. Now, the other thing under the expensive is, according to the research, daycare is so expensive that 52% of mothers are considering leaving the workforce due to inadequate child care, with 33% unable to find affordable care already out of work. In 2023, the percentage of stay-at-home mothers rose to 25%, a significant increase from 15% in 2022. That's huge that people are having to decide between a career or being able to afford childcare. Now, I mentioned earlier that the Working Families Act was tied to education. Now, let me give you a number. So, funding for education is roughly between 45 and 50 billion dollars a fiscal year, meaning every year. With that money, the target is still low income, which is fine, but what about everybody else? The other people, I don't think anybody wants to have to decide between having a career and paying daycare. For example, I know of people paying $2,000 a month for daycare, and they are having to decide between family, a career, or who's raising their kids. Now, the government and specifically the taxpayers are providing taxpayer dollars to these two programs I talked about. The vouchers would be one, and then there's Working Families Act. And in addition, there's education money. These programs in general for daycare are giving people an incentive not to make money again so that they can qualify for these programs. And this program, like all of the rest, are targeted to low income families, which I said earlier, the threshold is so low. Basically, it's between $20,000 and $35,000. So that gives them the incentive not to want to make more money. And then the people, families who are working their butts off, they're deciding. And the metrics that I gave you with 50% of the mothers, and there's some dads sprinkled in there too, we need to have a national discussion about taking care of families. There is an effect to people not being able to spend time with their kids or being stressed out about where their kids are at. And it shouldn't just be targeted to poor people. It should be targeted to all Americans that are working hard. And this program worries me because, as you know, people who go to daycare, they need nurturing. They spend a lot of time away from their parents, and these companies that are doing daycare, the laws really help them out because these hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions that they're getting from the federal and then the state governments, well, that's going to their company and to their employees that they like. So the tax-paying citizens, married people, are feeling the brunt of what the federal government is doing, is allowing the cost to stay higher. So if it's $2,000 a month now, how much will it be in a couple more years? Now, currently, we have high inflation in certain states. We've got the cost of just living being so high for a family of four, and now you're going to put daycare cost on the married couple or the single families as well. And you're going to have a cumulative effect of people aren't going to be in the workforce. Kids are going to be left at home because parents, especially once they get 9, 10, and 11, they're not going to be able to afford it. And why is it a crime and a punishment to be a strong working family paying taxes, yet you don't qualify for a program that the government is funding with millions of dollars a year, and you can't even qualify? And it's a small segment of the population who are getting to use these services. The mainstream medias and some of the online sites that you go to and look for information, their only focus is on people who aren't really working, who need childcare, and they're sitting on these millions of dollars. And what's happening? Are they using the money for like other things? And the effect on society will be detrimental. Kids need nurturing, and parents need to have options so that they're not spending 90% of their income on having their house and then childcare. This is George. This is Just Listen. Let me know what you think.